Welcome to the Nurturing Fathers Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men succeed at the most challenging and rewarding job they'll ever have, being a dad. Your hosts are Mark Perlman, the creator and founder of the Nurturing Fathers program, and his son, Corey Perlman, who facilitates the program at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary and is also a father of 2 young children. It's time to add tools to your Nurturing Fathers toolbox. Mark and Corey, take it away.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Nurturing Fathers podcast. We are back together again, Dad and I. My name, as always, is Corey Perlman, and I'm here with my lovable father, Mark Perlman.
Thank you. What a kind words. Mark Perlman here from Tampa, Florida with Corey, and we are going to talk today about a unique and special area of fathering that we have really enjoyed over many, many, many years, and that's getting out in nature with our kids, spending time in parks, the woods, the meaning of exposing our children and family to getting out in nature. So for a start, Corey, let's talk about your childhood. And your mom and I would take you for pretty much every summer adventures out to the North Georgia mountains, which were the closest mountains to us in Florida. And we would just have a time out there in a cabin, cooking our own food, roasting hot dogs, walking in the woods, getting in streams, under waterfalls for the first time. You probably were no more than 4 or 5 years old when we started taking you out there. And we did that just about every summer. So there must have been something fun, meaningful, and important to us.
It definitely was. I think that this kind of combines a couple of episodes that we've done where, rituals, right? So one of the rituals that I have most fond memories of was getting out into the woods with our family. And I think that today, in the era of technology that we're in and the concerns that we all have as parents about our kids just always being connected to TV and there's the phones and the devices and all that kind of thing, if it now more than ever, it's important to unplug and get out in nature. And it's something that you and Mom did with us, like you say, year in and year out. And it's some of my favorite memories. In fact, it's one of the reasons that we live where we live today is that we are so close to those exact same places that you once took us so many years ago. And like you said, it's very simple. It's trees, it's woods, it's streams, it's, cooking at home, it's playing games, it's laughing and just having some really fun memories that had absolutely nothing to do with technology, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. As an adult and as a father, it fed my mind, body, and spirit. Just being out there, I just felt the vibration of nature, the trees, the sound of the running water in the background, occasional animal, and just soaking up being out there. And it just let all the stresses and strains of life and challenges, left that behind, and we were just in a place of peacefulness and beauty and relaxation and tremendous fun. And I remember that each time we would take you, and often friends of yours, there was a sense of adventure where you would try something new every time, depending on what the ages and stages were. But it might have been just the length of the walk or climbing a rock. We named certain little places like the Wishing Rock and this waterfall we called the Transformer, because when the water came down on your shoulders and you walked out of there, everything was just a little bit brighter and a little more alive. But each time Corey left our time in the woods, I remember him feeling just expanded. He would try new things. He'd feel himself in a new challenge, new environment, cross a log for the first time. There was always this little bit of tension between Mom and I. She said, no, he's not ready to do that. I said, no, he could do it. Come on, Corey, just grab my hand. And, dads like to stretch those boundaries a little, hope within the bounds of safety. But he felt great. He felt like he has grown and stretched every time we went out there.
Yeah, there was so many different elements of, I feel like, growth as a kid. Like you said, you're challenging yourself, overcoming fear in nature and things of that nature. But I also remember a moment where, it was probably, and at least it felt like at the time, maybe March. And I, as a little kid, wanted to get into the freezing cold water. And Dad had a choice to make a memory with me or to make the rational decision of not getting in the water. And do you remember what you chose?
You tell me.
You jumped in. It's a memory that I'll never forget. It was awesome, but we froze our buns off, but it's, burned in my memory. A couple other things that I think are just so important with the woods, besides just challenging yourself in adventure, but I definitely got a a sense of the importance, I think, of nature, and the trees are living things, and how important that nature is to our world. And so giving our kids that sense of importance as they grow up and generations after generations, we want to keep these beautiful, environments alive and well. So I do feel like I learned the importance of nature and the woods through those experiences, and this a presence of God. And it's like just the natural beauty, and whatever your spiritual, feeling is, you just feel it out there. And gosh, I got to tell you, one of the greatest moments I've had as a dad was hiking through the woods with Talia as a very little girl, probably 4 or 5 years old. And we're just walking, and she just looked at me and is like, God's here. She said something to that effect, that this is where God is. And I was like, oh, wow, that was really, really powerful.
Yeah. And the philosopher in me, you're out there with the leaves on the ground, and you're out there with things growing and the beauty of new growth, and then the falling away, and the things die and pass, and they go into the earth, and then they create new things. The cycle of life and death is everywhere. And it's in such a way that it's not scary. It is just the way it is. And it's an amazing thing to be part of. And for kids, I think it just awakens them, as Corey said, to nature, and an appreciation and a value that we as humans don't want to lose. Now, in the world of digital, cell phones and digital games and all of that, they all have their place, but it really troubles me when kids don't get out and play outside. I'm hearing that they spend almost no time outside, some kids, and that's a tremendous loss. I was blessed as a young kid growing up in the Bronx, and New York City and the Bronx are, steel and concrete in the big city, but we had a park across the street. And my memories of that park, it was just a place of adventure. It was finding animals and stray dogs and fixing them up and buying food and putting our pennies together, and one adventure after another. And being out there in that park was an incredibly important balance to growing up in the big city. And it always had a really central place in my life. The other place that we do nature, since we're blessed to live in Sarasota, Florida, is getting out to the beach. The woods are not the only place,
Sure.
any place of nature. Once I get out on the beach, and I start walking, and I see the water to the left of me and the white sand in front of me, I just again begin to shed the stresses and strains of daily life and feel very, very relaxed.
Well, and keep in mind, in both of those situations, another thing that just came to mind in terms of benefit was walking. Right. And so one of the things that I've talked recently with friends with is it's very difficult to have conversations with some of our, as the kids get a little bit older, Talia's 9, and I know as they get into teenage years, of having conversations. And what I'm learning is face-to-face conversations for them are much more difficult than side-by-side conversations. So it just reminded me that both in the woods and at the beach, what we would do is we'd walk, and we wouldn't be looking at each other, but we would just be walking. And all of a sudden I would start talking, and there's these side-by-side conversations. And I've had the same with Talia, where they're just a lot easier and free-flowing when they don't almost feel like they're being talked at or whatever the case may be, but they're just talking. And the next thing you know, a very intense and great conversation has been had, either in the beach or at the woods. And another thing that just popped in my head too, just all great benefits to remind us of the importance of getting out in nature, is another thing that was instilled in me, and I've tried to instill in my children, is to keep your eyes open for really cool things to see. When I was sitting in the woods at this silent retreat and not looking at my phone and just being, 3 deer just crept on by me, and it was just one of the most magical moments. And then of course, every time we're out at the beach, we sit and stare long enough, and all of a sudden you'll see that little fin pop out of the water, and it's just such a magical moment. And I've instilled that in my kids. They say, how do you always see animals and stuff like that? And I say, because I look for them.
Watch. You better tell them what kind of fin that was. You're going to start scaring people. It's not a shark. They're dolphins in the Gulf of Mexico where we are.
That's true.
But I remember one time in the woods, we're all walking on the path. There's probably 3 or 4 or 5 adults and 6 kids or so, the whole little group of us. But Corey liked to be the trailblazer. That was his name at the time. So he was like 6 or 7 or 8 years old, and he's trailblazing in front of us. And a little snake crosses his path. It was a perfectly friendly snake, nothing dangerous. All of us watched Corey jump straight up in the air. I mean, literally 2 feet off the ground, and the snake went by, and you came down.
I remember that a little bit differently. It was not a little snake. It was a gigantic snake. It was like at least 15 feet long, fangs just pouring out of its mouth. I mean, this was a very, very intense snake, and luckily I survived.
I didn't know you could jump that high.
That's true. That's probably as high as I've ever jumped. So our question to you in this episode is, what kind of opportunities are you giving your kids to get out in nature? Are you making it part of your routine? Is it a ritual? What kind of rituals do you do to get out in nature? What part of environments do you live in where what makes the most sense for you? Is it the woods? Is it the beach? Is it the lake?
It just could be a walk around the block if you live in a treed neighborhood. I
That's
mean,
right.
just to get outside and be there, it doesn't have to be a huge adventure. But when we did drive up there, we'd play music in the car and we'd sing along. And as Corey said, the walking side by side, something magical about it. You just start talking. And before the end of this 3 or 4 or 5 days together, everybody talked to somebody else and every kid talked to another kid or an adult. And it was just special time and it built memories. I mean, you can remember us being there and the quilts hanging from the wall of this lodge that we went in, and the food was just the fish that they cooked was so fresh. Everything about it was so unique and special. It was just great memories.
There was a simplicity, I feel like,
Yes.
that it slowed things down and gave you the opportunity to stop and smell the roses a little bit, or in this case, the fried trout that they would have at the lodge, which ironically, the only time we would ever watch TV is we go to the lodge to watch the NBA playoffs.
That's right.
And the basketball, we talked about that earlier. But so I hope this is motivating to all of us just to reinforce the importance of that. And Jess and I talk about, my wife, of letting summers go by and not getting into the woods enough. And if we're not careful, let's be real honest with ourselves. This is something that can get pushed to the side.
But I admire what you and Jess do, because you take your children out there, and Corey has become a little bit of a group leader in that he takes other families or other men who live near him, friends, they go up there and he introduces them to the same woods and the same experiences and the same waterfall that they go under, the transformer, and they have an experience of that. I don't know how frequently you do it, but I've been impressed over the years that you have embraced that as your own. And you not only take your own family, but you take other families to introduce them.
I'm throwing this out there, Dad. I'm putting a challenge out to those that have listened up to this point of this. I would love to see, and I know you would too, on the Nurturing Fathers Facebook page, a picture of you, the dad, or, the parents and your kids out in nature. So whatever the case may be, and we'll start it out.
We'll throw a couple up there.
We'll throw a couple up there of us in the transformer, freezing our tails off, hiking in the woods, and would love to just see some of those pictures. And yeah, you're right. I mean, this goes beyond just taking our kids out there. I also take, groups of guys out there with me and adults as well, because getting out in nature from a stress relief and all that is so unbelievably important. So
thank you all for listening. Thank you for all the good things you do with and for your kids. And Corey and I will be back for more.
Yeah. And again, if you're enjoying this podcast and some of the different episodes, please shoot us a review, leave a comment, share it. You could take a picture of the podcast that you're listening to and share it to your social media, which we'd really appreciate. And there definitely is a Facebook page that we're very involved in called the Nurturing Fathers Facebook page. Please go check that out, facebook.com/nurturingfathers. And post a picture of you in the woods with your kids. That would be awesome. We'd really appreciate it. Till next time, thanks everybody. Make it a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Nurturing Fathers podcast. Have questions or comments? Join the conversation at facebook.com/nurturingfathers or email us at nurturingfathers@gmail.com.